Good afternoon, everyone. It's Sunday, October 12, 2025, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Champaign, Illinois. You're watching Co-op for Two, and you're joining me for letter number 2 of the latest Dear Holmes series that we've been reading, called Return of the Ripper. Before we get started, let's check in with the chat, see how everyone's doing. Anna says, spooky intro. So you saw a couple things there. Rob has been experimenting with AI video on the Discord and sent me some sample videos. You saw one of those if you were paying attention in that little intro. We have an interesting case today. As a reminder, if you haven't watched the first letter last week, this will make no sense. You should stop watching, catch up on last week's before you watch this week's. What else do we need to talk about? Yesterday, we played through a sort of deluxe escape room game called The Ghost in the Attic. Didn't love it. Lots to like about it, but didn't quite love it. I have been trying to remember to put quick, spoiler-free, sort of one-paragraph mini reviews of the games we play on YouTube, on the video. So if you ever are afraid to watch, don't want to watch a video, but want to see if we like the game, you can always go to the video and just look at the first comment I post where I talk about the game. All right, let's talk a little bit about plans for, we're in the middle here now of our spooky October marathon that we like to do. Jonathan Warner has been helping to coordinate what games we play. We're going to be ramping that up in the coming weeks and playing even more, but we're off to a good start. We've played some good ones, we've played some not so good ones, but we got plenty more to play in the coming weeks. There is a Board Game Geek Guild for this channel. There's a link on this YouTube where we plan out the games, and if you're interested in helping decide what games we play and when, you can visit that. But I guess for the Dear Holmes session here that we play, for the play-by-mail session, which we've been doing now for probably 3 years, every Sunday, some sort of play-by-mail thing, or at least 2.5 years or so. What was I saying? There is a Discord channel, a Discord server for this channel, and one of the active channels on that server is the play-by-mail channel where people discuss these cases. And the Dear Holmes people who join me for these regular sessions in particular like to hang out and chat and discuss theories over the month or so that each case lasts, and this case has been no exception. There's been lots of good talk about this case. In fact, I think the channel has picked up on some important key things that I agree with that we missed during our first read-through of the letters, which is not that uncommon, but we're going to talk about that in a second. I do remember what I was trying to say before. What I was saying before is these sessions, these Sunday afternoon sessions, seem to be a regular group, a different group than joins my midnight sessions. And so I don't know if you guys need to be reminded constantly about the Board Game Geek Guild, etc. But I guess most of you watching this aren't really watching it to watch it. You just got it in the background, and the longer I go, the better. It helps the cat fall asleep, or what, it keeps the plants growing, whatever reason you've got this channel on. Let's also take a moment to thank the Patreon supporters of this channel. This is a great example of where your support makes a difference, because the Dear Holmes cases are not cheap. As the years go by, I do appreciate more and more these very few companies that do these regular mail-based things, and it's wonderful to be able to share this time together. I like that we have now a tradition every Sunday. The Patreon supporters make it possible. All right, what else do we need to talk about? We are almost at 5,000 subscribers, almost at the 5-year anniversary of this channel, which is exciting. I'm not sure exactly how that will be celebrated on this channel, but probably in some form. And I think what will happen is this coming Sunday, I will have a live Q&A. I think maybe I'll do it Saturday. I think we'll still go ahead with the Dear Holmes session next week as well, regardless. But I do hope you can join me for that 5-year anniversary Q&A session. Okay, now let us talk about the case, Return of the Ripper. A little bit of recap. Not because we need it to remind us, but more because this is a compelling, nice, constrained case. We weren't flooded with details, but we've got a bunch of sort of strange happenings here. We're told about Hugo Olsen, someone who appears to be native to Sweden, who's traveled now to Spitalfields from Manchester recently. He says he's come over because local construction convinced him to relocate. He's a carpenter. He's doing some work for his landlord to help pay the rent. He talks about where he recently, he talks about his brother who had recently moved to Paddington, and again comments that he spoke Swedish. He needed to ask the local kids help pronouncing English words occasionally. We're told the date. On the 26th, he goes to the police. He goes to the local police. He said someone's been stalking us or watching us. That was weird. They describe a man in a deerstalker hat with his collar turned up, watching them for 10 minutes. The local cop said, "What are you worried about? This is a tough neighborhood. If that's the worst problem you got, leave me alone." Local kids afterwards talked to said once more we saw this guy watching them. Then recently, or let's see, last night, what's today's date? November 6th, 1895. Last night, something weird. He comes into the bar, he just gets food. He's normally a drinker, sits, talks. Today, he just came in, got his dinner, and left. The landlord stops by his house. Actually, we are given a time here. This erasable ink is not the best. Okay, so 8:30, the landlord comes in, knocks on the door. He hears a voice say, "Go away, I'm sick." He leaves. He realizes that doesn't even sound like my guy, my tenant, Hugo Olsen. So he gets concerned. He brings back a friend. 10 minutes later, I guess I should mark that. Anyway, he brings back a friend 10 minutes later, and they find the place empty and covered in blood. Blood on the ceiling, blood pooled on the floor everywhere. No body. So the landlord and his friend look around. They're horrified, obviously. They call the police. The police come. They step all over the scene. Footprints everywhere from the police. They find in the corner a chipped bureau that is relatively unscathed by blood. They find a hand under the bed. Let's see. They find a hand under the bed, a severed left hand, missing the ring finger of the hand, and they find a right earlobe by the dresser. Inside the top drawer of the dresser, they find a note. And the note is hearkening back to Jack the Ripper. It's filled with phonetically spelled words. That feels like a clue here. Talking about eating people. A very creepy letter. Signed from hell, which is what Jack the Ripper signed letters from, or at least signed one. Okay, then Inspector Lestrade, who's writing to Sherlock Holmes asking for our help, says when the press gets hold of this, it's going to be panic. All right, that was our letter, a very cool letter. Now, when we had our discussion yesterday, we had some initial suspicions. And one of those suspicions was that it's not our guy, Hugo Olsen, who's been killed in that apartment. That maybe Hugo Olsen killed someone. The phonetically spelled word seems like something that a foreigner would write. And then the idea that maybe someone is making it appear like it's Jack the Ripper, but really maybe he's killed the guy that was following them and watching them, etc. Now, I believe after that, I can't remember, someone can remind me in the chat, if the idea that there was no murder came up during our discussion. I believe it was only afterwards in the Discord, but I could be wrong. But whether it came up in the initial session 1 or in the Discord, I think those of you who suspect there's no murder were really onto something. And the idea is something like this. There's blood everywhere. There's a severed hand, but there's no mention of seeing footprints at the initial crime scene before the cops start walking over the scene. And they've got a lantern, they see a pool of blood. And the cabinet where the note is way in the corner. So if you killed someone, you'd probably walk through the blood. The blood is very suspicious that there's no body. Like, you would have to have carved someone up there, then how are you moving out the body? So Joe J. Anderson tells me that it did come up during the initial discussion. Okay, so fair enough. But the idea that someone is faking a murder here is much more appealing. And I think what we're sort of settling on is this idea that Hugo Olsen is on the run. He's on the lam. And he may be trying to fake his own death. I think that is the top theory now. That he has somehow got his hands on some body parts and blood, maybe some local pig's blood from the butcher, and basically staged a crime scene. And then the idea, there are several interesting ideas. One is, what's the explanation for this hand with the missing ring finger? And the idea is that maybe there was some identifying information on this ring finger of this body part this person has gotten hold of. And he's cut it off because it would identify where the body came from. Now, there are a couple problems, obstacles with this theory. First of all, where has he gotten all the blood? I mean, blood coagulates. So you can't just you can't just go into the pharmacy and say, give me a gallon of blood. But you could go get pig's blood. You could get blood of an animal somewhere. I guess you could even kill a local animal and collect its blood, or kill a local animal at the scene if you wanted to stage a murder. But there's blood on the ceiling. Now, blood on the ceiling, that's an odd thing. Blood on the ceiling is odd. You could absolutely get blood on the ceiling if you cut someone's artery. It could spray. Otherwise, you'd have to throw it in the room. But that's, I think, what the channel is settling on. The main theory is that he's got sort of like a pail of blood, and he's just like throwing it all over the room, covering the room. And then he's leaving these body parts to make it really look like he's been killed, and then he's fleeing. And that sort of makes sense with the initial story about how he's recently come to town. Like, we think he's on the run. And the idea is that the person in the deerstalker hat is trying to follow him and catch him, and he's got to flee again. Now, I do want to point out one thing that's odd. I guess the other interesting theory that's come up on the Discord, and you are all welcome to join the Discord if you want to join in these discussions. One of the ideas is that the person stalking him, following him, is his brother, and that there's some issue with his brother trying to catch him. Now, I want to point out one little tiny flaw with this theory about the person that was seen following him. So if our theory is that our guy, Hugo, is on the run and he's being pursued by someone who's now found him, and that's why he has to stage his own death and disappear, I think I would consider a slight problem with that theory, not a deal breaker, but a little bit of a problem, is that he's gone to the police about this person. That's a little odd. If you're sort of on the run because you've done something bad that you can't tell the police about, right? Like, he can't go to he's obviously not gone to the police and said, hey, some crazy stalker has been trying to kill me. Then it's a little odd that he would go to the police in any event and say, I saw someone following me. Like, the people who are on the run like that, who can't go to the police and tell them the truth, normally would not be going to the police at all. So it is odd that he went to the police and said, I just saw some guy watching me. Like, what are the police going to do? They're going to go, in your best case scenario, go ask this person, and this person looks like a detective in a deerstalker hat. They look like Sherlock Holmes. So wouldn't you be getting yourself into trouble? Aren't they going to go to this guy and say, what are you doing? And this guy's going to say, I'm a detective, private eye. I'm trying to find the robber, the person who committed fraud. And I think it's Hugo. So it's a little strange that he went to the police at all. Let's see, have I missed anything? Whoever said the blood was human, we don't know what the blood is. No one has analyzed it yet. And removal of ring finger could also be crime of passion. Index finger is what's used for fingerprints. Well, if the index finger is what is used for fingerprints and only the index finger, that would be a very good motive to cut off that finger. That's a very good idea. If you think Hugo was staging the scene, how do you explain the different voice when the landlord knocked? Well, that's a good question. That's a very good question. So when we read it, it said he answered back in a slightly different voice, go away, I'm sick. That's a weird thing to say, but you could explain it in several ways. Like, one is, it was Hugo and he was trying to pretend he had a cold and he was sick, and so he just used a different voice, like, I'm sick. And the landlord picked up that it wasn't his normal voice, or he could be pretending to be the voice of the killer. I like the idea that he would cut off the finger so it couldn't be fingerprinted. That's a very interesting idea. And he does have a few days to get ready to go find a body and stuff. All right, well, I think that's our recap, and it's time to read letter number 2. Okay, it's Lestrade again from the Metropolitan Police, and he still hasn't bought himself a typewriter, which is unfortunate for us. All right, here we go. So he's written another letter on the same day, November 6th. Dear Mr. Holmes, I know my first letter has not yet reached you. Indeed, the carrier could not have left more than an hour before I had to take up my pen and give you the latest updates on our investigation into the murder of Mr. Hugo Olson. We may have a break in the case, which, if it pans out, should bring the case to a swift conclusion. We have now located several of Olson's employers and associates. We have confirmed he was a carpenter. However, he did not last long with any place of employment. He was often late to his jobs, and when he was on time, he was drunk. He only lasted a few weeks in each position. One interesting item to note is that several of the people with whom he worked said that when he arrived at the jobs, he often smelled of chemicals. When pressed as to what they meant, one person said he smelled like a hospital. Another said he smelled of varnish, and another said he smelled like a dead body prepared for a funeral. The smell could very well be from chemicals he uses in the trade. However, his room had no such smell about him. No such smell about it. We have also discovered that Olson had a rather large insurance policy taken out in his name for £5,000. The insurance will go to his next of kin, in this case, his brother. We, along with the insurance company, are in the process of locating his brother in Paddington. The Metropolitan Police coroners who inspected Olson's few remains issued their report. They have concluded that the earlobe and hands were not hacked off the victim. The severing of the hand was done with some skill, and the earlobe appears to have been removed by a different tool than the hand, most likely a scalpel. This fits with some of the theories of the actual Whitechapel murderer. You will recall that the original killer worked with a speed and skill that indicated he may have had a medical background. A few of the victims had specific organs removed from their bodies, such as Miss Annie Chapman and Miss Elizabeth Eddowes, both of whom had their uteruses removed. We are currently checking the whereabouts of those with a medical background who were accused of the Whitechapel murders. However, most of us are in agreement that this is not the correct line of inquiry. Olson's murderer, while having some similarities to the original Whitechapel killer, is most likely an imposter, trying to recreate the Ripper's killings. The room coated in blood and the few pieces of the body all point to a non-murderer. Sorry, a new murderer. Inspector Morton is currently searching the area to see if we can discover more of Olson's remains. We believe that even if the letter is revealing the truth, highly doubtful, we should at least have clothes and bones of the victim to discover. We believe the killer may have crammed the corpse into a trunk or possibly a sack and absconded with the remains. I will update you when and if Morton makes any discoveries. For my own line of inquiry, I was assigned to the London hospital to see if any doctors or surgeons could not account for their whereabouts yesterday evening. I was able to get a young constable by the name of Hawthorne assigned to me to assist in my inquiries. Hawthorne is a broad-shouldered, tall, and imposing figure, yet he has soft blue eyes and long eyelashes. I was correct in my belief that the contribution of the man's rugged exterior and gentle eyes could help in our questioning of the nurses. The ladies were instantly smitten with Hawthorne, and it did not take long for us to find a doctor who is a possible suspect in the case. Below is the description of the man who we have yet to question, Dr. Henry Abraddon. Dr. Abraddon has been associated with London Hospital for over a decade, after having received his medical license from King's College, where he barely passed his examinations. He is described as a lurking, brutish man with bushy eyebrows, sloped shoulders, and a somewhat shuffling gait. He is also known around the hospital for having an unpredictable temperament. He is often rather quiet and keeps to himself, yet a minor issue, such as a misplaced note, can throw the doctor into a rage where he shouts at the staff and sometimes kicks over furniture. It is his dark moods that have repeatedly caused Dr. Abraddon to be overlooked for promotion. However, the staff we interviewed concur that Abraddon never sought a promotion and appeared to be content in his position. He never became violent enough to be released from the hospital. In fact, it sounds as though his violent temperament only flares up a few times a year. Outside of the hospital, Abraddon enjoys many vices. He drinks heavily, gambles in many of the dens around Spitalfields, and frequently illicit houses. One of Abraddon's colleagues, a Dr. Dean Nasson, admitted he had gone gambling with Abraddon on a few occasions after finishing a late shift. Olson is a married man with a family and said that while he enjoys a good game of cards, he has always been tight with his money. Abraddon was not so miserly with his earnings, often tossing a week's pay in a single night and being so drunk as to not remember what happened to the money. Nolson said he had noticed a change in his colleague over the last month. He said Abraddon had been much less volatile and had seemed happier. On the 5th of November, both Abraddon and Nasson worked a day shift. Nasson asked Abraddon about the change in mood, and Abraddon reportedly looked around to make sure no one was around that would hear and started whispering, "Tonight, everything changes for me. Listen." Unfortunately, they were interrupted at that point, and Nasson never had another opportunity to speak with Abraddon. Dr. Abraddon worked late shifts on the 26th of October and on the 1st and 2nd of November, so it is possible he could have been the man watching Olson. None of the hospital staff could say whether or not Dr. Abraddon owns a deerstalker cat. We are currently searching for him. He is not scheduled to work at the hospital again until tomorrow evening. We have a constable stationed outside the doctor's flat, as Abraddon has not yet returned to his home. If he does not return soon, then we shall get permission to search his residence. We are also beginning to question the ladies at the brothels he frequented. So far, no one saw him last night. This evening, we will go to the gambling dens he was known to frequent and question the people there. The doctor seems to be an unlikely suspect. Besides his outbursts, he has no known history of violence. He has also not made any known prejudicial statements against foreigners. Still, the change in demeanor around the time Olson began to be harassed is worth investigating. I shall have more news to share with you soon. On a final note, Chief Inspector Porter is having a few of his men question the butchers and undertakers in the area. As you know, it has been theorized that Jack the Ripper could have been a butcher because of the skill used in the precise cuts to the victims. The undertakers also have some skill with surgical tools, and the chief inspector feels no stone should be left unturned as we try to find the murderer before he strikes again. Sincerely, Inspector Lestrade. Okay, so I feel like everything here is confirming our theories. And then most intriguingly is that our guy Olson, smells of varnish and chemicals, and a little bit of hint at the end that those are kind of the chemicals that an undertaker working with dead bodies and preserving them would use. And then a little bit here giving away, it feels like foreshadowing that butchers and undertakers are going to come up in our case, hence our animal blood, etc. Let's see what the chat says. Okay. Not much has changed. Did it say why we are now looking at a doctor? I'm not sure I get where this jump came from. Isn't it because of the cut up body? Why a doctor? That seems a leap. I agree that it does seem like they leaped to a conclusion that it could be a doctor, but it sounds like what the police are focused on is that when they looked at the body and the hand and the ear, what they've detected is that the ear was cut off by a very sharp thing. They think a scalpel, hence someone with medical tools and skills. And the hand, let's see, what do they say? The hand is cut off with a different tool, but they're not hacked off the way a normal killer would cut off a hand. The severing of the hand was done with some skill, and the earlobe is severed by a scalpel. So when they get that report from the coroner, they say, okay, we're looking for a doctor. We're looking for a medical man. So they go to the hospital and they find everyone is very suspicious of this one creepy looking doctor who is prone to violence and had some very strange change of temperament right around the murder. But it's the way the body parts were cut off that makes them suspect a doctor. The other huge clue that has come up in this letter, in addition to the smell of undertaker chemicals, is the insurance policy. So Mr. Olson had a rather large insurance policy. So we now see a motive. The motive is fake your own death, pretend to be the brother, or work with your partner who's your brother, or maybe not even your brother, just a partner. And so perhaps you travel from town to town, or maybe he's got himself in trouble, and so they're going to stage his death, and maybe even they've staged this person following them. So I was talking about, why would you go to the police if someone is stalking you? So we still have the possibility that the person stalking him is a detective trying to catch him for insurance fraud. But now we have another theory. And I said, why would he go to the police? If he's committed insurance fraud and he's escaping to a new town and he's thinking the person following him is the detective, you wouldn't go to the police and say some guy's following me. The police are going to go to that guy and say, and the guy's going to tell him, I'm a private investigator. We're searching this guy for insurance fraud. But if you're planning to stage your own murder at the hands of Jack the Ripper, then perhaps you do go to the police a week early and make up some story that some scary guy is stalking me, so that when you end up dead, they go and say, hey, he was being stalked. It just adds more credence to the theory that he was killed by some ne'er-do-well. So I guess that would be my preferred theory now, that he wasn't really being stalked and that he went to the police to make his eventual murder seem more believable, and that he's got some skill with bodies. Now, whether his brother's going to show up soon to collect the insurance money, I think. Might not be his real brother, might be just a partner, or could be himself playing both roles. Now, here are the parts that I don't get, though. And I'd be curious to hear what the chat thinks about this. All right, so the idea that he's traveling from town to town committing repeated insurance fraud is belied by the comments from his previous employers and associates. So when the police talked to his previous employers in the old town where he was, they've actually confirmed that he is a carpenter. No doubt confirmed that he is Swedish. So this isn't a short con. Like I was thinking, as he just showed up in this new town, lied about his past, pretending to be Swedish, and then he's going to come and pretend to be his brother. But apparently he's got a long past where everyone knows him as Hugo Olsen, as the Swede, as a carpenter. And they've traced back quite a bit of his history. They say for each past job, he only lasted a few weeks. So he has been a working carpenter for months and months, it seems. And he's got a drinking problem that's causing him to get fired from his job. And he always smells of chemicals, which sound like they might be chemicals you would use to handle dead bodies. So this is a wrinkle. I think this is not trivial to explain. He's a drunk, and he's getting fired from job to job, and maybe that's why he needs money. But why is he... I mean, our theory was that he needed a dead body to fake his death, so he's gone and gotten a dead body. But this suggests that he's working with dead bodies always. That for months, while he's working other jobs in other towns, he's dealing with dead bodies. So do we think he's one of these people selling dead bodies? Is that what it is? That his sort of side hustle is digging up bodies or getting bodies from the hospital and selling parts. And so that's why it's so easy for him to access a dead body when he wants to fake his own death. But that prior to that, he's still been dealing with dead bodies? That would make sense. But then it's a little bit of a stretch that not only does he have a secondary job dealing with dead bodies and selling parts on the black market, but he's also now faking some insurance theft. That means it's 2 crimes that he's involved with. And then I suppose another question you might consider is this doctor that they've run into a complete red herring? Or has this doctor working with our guy? And that's why he said, like, things have changed. The doctor, remember, the doctor is about to tell his coworker something. His demeanor changed, and he was about to tell his friend. Where is what he was about to tell his friend? Tonight, everything changes for me. Listen. And this is the guy, the doctor, who needs some money. So I wonder if if the doctor's not a complete red herring, but might be tied to our case because he's working with Hugo. Working with him, giving him body parts to sell. Or even working in the insurance scam. What do you think? Is this doctor a complete red herring, or is he somehow tied to our case? Okay, Marlene says, good call, Jesse, but I don't know what she's talking about. Remember that by the time I read the chat and the delays, you can't just answer a question with a yes or a no or a non sequitur. You have to give a complete full answer about what you're talking about, because otherwise I won't know. Dawn Asher said, a dead body will appear. He will turn up as his brother to identify it as being him. I don't think a dead body is going to... I don't think they are going to find more parts from him. I don't think there is going to be another dead body. I think they're going to try to claim the insurance and just say the body is never going to show up. Marlene says, could he be blackmailing the doctor? I don't think anyone's blackmailing this doctor. What we were hearing from the doctor is that the doctor has come into money. It's either completely independent red herring, or this doctor is in on either the black market body part selling or the insurance scam. One of those. The doctor deal still seems a stretch. It absolutely does seem like a stretch, but I think it's absolutely possible. I think we are going to hear that blood was taken from a butcher, and that our guy has found this dead body part. But I am thinking that this doctor might be involved. That our guy Olson may have approached this doctor and made a deal to get body parts and sell them for money. DJ Moneycut says, Lestrade is always wrong, so doctor is probably a red herring. Well, the doctor is certainly not a killer, but I think the doctor may have been contacted by Hugo, and that he's working with him to get him the body parts. Buddha Bell says, I want to know more about the blood. If it's pig's blood, I don't see it as a doctor involved. He still has to get the body parts from somewhere, although I still think the biggest mystery here is that he smelled of chemicals like embalming fluid even months prior. I think if I had to guess, what I guess is our guy Hugo is a carpenter and alcoholic, and also has a side job of selling illegal body parts to the black market. Someone can remind me, who's buying all these body parts? But it was a thing. So I think what we've got is Hugo Olson is a real carpenter, a drunk, got fired from jobs, makes money on the side by working with hospitals and doctors, selling black market body parts. That's why he always smells of embalming fluid, getting them from funeral homes, whatever. Maybe he sells them to doctors. Is that what it is? You get the bodies from the funeral home and you sell them to doctors who use them in their medical training? And he's relocated here. He's decided to commit insurance fraud. Maybe because he's being followed by someone who knows him, or maybe he's completely made up the story about someone following him to lead credence. He's approached this doctor at the hospital and said, I want to sell you body parts or buy body parts. And that's how he's gotten his body parts. He staged his own death. His partner, his brother, is going to show up to claim the insurance. Probably not going to be him. That would be a little too convincing. Although if his twin brother shows up, then we know what's going on. Medical schools bought them because they couldn't get them otherwise for classes. Okay, so maybe we think he's getting them from the funeral homes and selling them to the doctors. Arsene says, if the doctor is always drunk, there's no way his hands would be steady. Okay, it's not the doctor that's drunk. It's our carpenter that's drunk. I think the missing ring finger is a clue. Don't know what yet. I do think it is a clue too, but I like the idea that it was cut off so it couldn't be fingerprinted or for identification purposes. Either way works. Anything else? I am drinking some coffee here from Peru that my neighbor dropped off. Occasionally we trade some coffee beans. My neighbor dropped off a little bag of Peruvian light roasted coffee. Delicious. These cups, whenever I have this cup on the screen, it looks so dirty. It's not dirty though. What it is that when I make the coffee, the way I make it is I make it in an espresso machine. So I grind only 10 grams at a time, or 11 grams, and then I make a shot of espresso, and then I add half and half, and then I add water from the steam wand of the espresso, which foams everything up. It's a very nice combination drink, but what happens is the foam, when it foams it up, the foam forms this ring around the side. That's why these cups look dirty, but they're not. I will sometimes make pour over. If I'm making a large batch, like if Greg comes over and we're making coffee to drink, I will make a pour over. But when I just make a cup, an Americano for myself, not really an Americano because I add half and half, but I use the espresso machine. They say you shouldn't make single shots of espresso from the espresso machine. You should always make a double shot because the single shot is a little less reliable, a little less consistent. But I enjoy the process of making the espresso, so I'd rather make multiple single shot espressos over the course of the day. It's not really it's not a shot of it's a shot of espresso. Then I add a tablespoon of half and half, and then hot water to fill it up. So it's more like an Americano with half and half. You can go watch my couple videos on the channel about an Arduino electronics project making a scale for the espresso machine, where I also talk about the drink that I have, that I tend to drink. The coffee YouTube world is rather crazy. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, the coffee world in general, I think I have some theories about it, a little bit because of caffeine being a drug, but the coffee world is filled with people doing ridiculous things, claiming that, you know, if you stir your coffee clockwise, it tastes different than counterclockwise. There are a couple YouTube channels I watch. I mean, the most famous coffee person on YouTube is James Hoffman, who seems to be the best at what he's doing. But there are a whole bunch. If you want to get into coffee YouTube, if you want to have YouTube content to watch that is sort of cringy and full of bullshit, if you like watching, there's some joy to be watched by watching these like car salesman type people. Anyway, there's a couple of channels. I mean, James Hoffman is not. There's not that much bullshit with James Hoffman, so you can't sort of watch it ironically. But Lance Hedricks is another guy who does coffee, and then Hoons Coffee does these live sessions every day, and then Decent Espresso makes an espresso machine, and the guy John something, who is the starter, who's the guy who wants to be Steve Jobs. He's like emulating the Apple founder. And Scott Rayo, who wrote a book on espresso. All of these people get on YouTube, and they're like, okay, let's, distribute the coffee with needles that are like 0.3 millimeters, 0.02 millimeters, or 0.04 millimeters. That makes a difference. And talking about, tamp pressure of 12 pounds versus 10. And none of them are ever doing blind tastings. None of them are ever actually scientifically showing that they can taste the difference between these things. They're just coming up with more and more convoluted things that are supposedly affecting their coffee. And you watch them do these tasting notes, and they look at the bag, and the bag says it tastes of, black cherry from Africa, and tastes of the dirt from the Peruvian Andes. And they read the bag, and then they taste it, and they're like, yep, there's the black dirt from Peruvian Andes. It's such bullshit. It's like the wine people, but much worse. They've done studies on the wine experts, and like, you blindfold them, they can't tell the difference between a white wine and a red wine. So it's just it's hours and hours and millions of dollars of bullshit. But watching these people talk about it is entertaining. Okay, so the rest of the channel is returned to our case here. We're not talking about grave robbing, but people being stolen before burial is what Marlene was saying with the selling to the stuff. Okay, why bother faking a death if a good business was happening in regards to the body parts? I think that's a fair point, but boy, if you're already doing underworldly, illegal stuff, someone comes up with an idea, hey, you could use these body parts to fake your own death and get 5,000 pounds in one payoff. That's got to be hard. That's got to be very attractive. Once you start, it's like the mafia. Once you start doing illegal stuff, like, the world is your oyster. You start thinking about, well, if we're in the illegal stuff business, let's look at our strengths. Let's look at what scams we can pull off. Someone says, hey, why don't you just fake your own death? 5,000 pounds. That's pretty tempting. I think the story is already flawed if the police haven't determined whether it's human blood or try to identify the hand. Well, I think you're being a little hard on them. It's not so easy to identify a hand, and they've assumed that what you would normally assume, that the person in that flat has been killed. So, and autopsy takes time. We've just been contacted on the day. This is the day or the day after the murder. It's going to take them time to type that blood as not being human. And it's going to take them time to try to track down the hand. And I think they're assuming that it's the guy, but they might investigate it. But give them some time. It's only been one day. All right, let's end it here. We're almost at the hour mark. Next week, we will, I believe, play the third letter in this case. It's conceivable that we'll skip a week while I do the live Q&A. I do hope you can join me for that as well. Remember, there's a Discord if you want to discuss theories of this case. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for almost 5 years of this channel and 5,000 subscribers. I'll see you next time.